All right, thank you. So yes, I'm Giles Bristow. I'm from an organisation called Surfers Against Sewage. You might recognise us. We're a campaigning organisation and a movement of hundreds of thousands of water lovers across the UK. I'm a surfer. I'm RNLI crew in Lyme Regis, but my greatest passion is sea swimming. And I moved to the coast a number of years ago to do that more frequently and found that I couldn't because regularly there was pollution where we wanted to swim. And that pollution is often sewage. Now that's in England. I know we're talking about Wales, but I live in England. We run an app, the Safer Seas and Rivers Service app, that Fergus was mentioned a minute ago. And yes, we receive data from Welsh Water. I'll talk about that a little bit in a bit, or happy to afterwards. I'm a former environmental lawyer in the City of London, but I've had a long career in NGOs. But the themes that have run through my career are that the power of people and communities to create change is the thing that makes that happen, and that collaboration is really, really key. So thank you very much for organising today. It's absolutely vital that we get round these subjects and talk to them honestly and together. So it's really key. So thank you. Surfers Against Sewage, right? So yeah, we're a sort of an action and a campaigning charity, if you like. We are hundreds of thousands of people across the UK, and it's all people who care about our ocean, but also our wild waters. They are all linked, so we have over time moved upriver, so we care about rivers and lakes too. And we campaign across all sorts of things. So sewage, that's what we're most well known for, but also climate and plastics and ocean restoration. But at the moment, we're in this amazing, unprecedented time of public concern around our rivers, lakes and seas. And that's about sewage and that's about agricultural runoff, but the dire state of our waters in the UK. And honestly, people are angry. They are super angry about this. James and I, James River Action organised a march last Sunday, the March for Clean Water. It was absolutely amazing. 15,000 people turned out. We were a junior partner on that, but we were blown away by the energy and enthusiasm in that crowd. So this is something that people really care about. So that's a message I want to really land. Like, this has to be sorted out. It was an electoral issue. It was like sort of number 3, if that means anything, on the doorstep. But it's super important to people. It matters to them. This is about undermining the beauty and the passion that people have for places that they love and the place that they live. So yeah, a lot of our work at Surfers Against Sewage is really, really focused on England, right? We do a lot of that. We live in Cornwall. Our HQ is in St Agnes. And we blame and bash the privatised water companies. You've probably heard of that a lot in the press. We blame that for prioritising profit over pollution and getting shareholder dividends out the door, and rather than investing as they should be in the environment and restoring it. We also blame Westminster for a lot of that, for the government, for letting this whole situation get out of control. And then we blame the regulators because they've been starved of the resources they need to do a proper job of ensuring that the polluters are held to account. But as we've been hearing today, Wales is in a different position. Right? It's not a privatised water company. Yet we still have issues here, so we've been hearing about that. So we still have pollution, both from agriculture, but also sewage here in Wales. So things desperately need fixing here too. I think we've got some, so there you go, some pictures, if you look into it, the pictures of pollution and stuff in the water there. But I put this up because it's about the water quality and sewage, but it's also microplastics and a host of other chemicals and contaminants, as we've been hearing today. We publish an annual report every year called the Water Quality Report, and we last did it in the end of 2023, so looking back at data. And the water companies in Wales didn't perform brilliantly in that. I don't want to bash Welsh Water, this isn't an opportunity for that at all. But as you said, we're monitoring well in Wales. We're nearly at 100% of the monitoring, so EDM knowing if sewage is being tipped into the environment or not. So that's an indicator, but it doesn't tell us the whole story, as you said. But what that EDM data is telling us is there's an awful lot of sewage still going into our environment. So more than 600,000 hours of sewage, that's the equivalent of over 25,500 continuous days of sewage discharge into our rivers and onto our beaches here in Wales. Welsh Water, there was 170 storm overflows that were found to be in breach of their permits for many reasons. Failing to supply data or improvement information, discharging in non-storm and also in emergency conditions. And one of the things we highlighted in that report was the use of an emergency overflow. So that's something that should be used for catastrophic incidences, but being used almost, I would say this as a campaigner, but operationally it was happening a lot to manage levels of sewage in the system. That's potentially illegal. It's definitely in breach of the permits and shouldn't be happening. The bigger picture is that Ofwat this year published a report about the performance of the water companies, and the Welsh companies, Welsh Water, was lagging behind. So, we often say the problem is privatisation, but there's more that needs to be done here in Wales too. So, I don't want to bash Welsh Water completely because there's so much that they are doing. And I tell you one of the things, and I want to praise Welsh Water for this, is that what is significantly different is a culture of wanting to try and sort this out and of being open. So you mentioned data, and we have very open conversations about data. Now, and that data means how much sewage is going into the environment, when it's happening, why it's happening. And we verify between us quite often when we see things that are different between our data sets, where things are going wrong or right. And what is different is that with Welsh Water, you're not owned by private equity, you're not driven to those dividends, and you therefore have a culture which is much more open, and we have much more honest conversations about what's happening in the environment. And so I just really, really wanted to flag that. James and I are doing a lot of work about what reform is really required across this whole system in the UK. And I'm really keen today to learn about what's the best we can learn from Welsh Water that we can bring into our thinking about what needs to happen in Scotland, in Northern Ireland, and in England too. And likewise across those different systems. Because frankly, none of them have got this sorted. It's pretty poor across the board, but there's flickers of great stuff happening in Wales. There's some good stuff happening in Scotland. And then we look abroad at Copenhagen and Denmark and other places, Germany, and we see other things that are happening well. And we need to combine these and bring them to the UK. Just quickly, at a principle level, someone mentioned Donella Meadows earlier, super important. We are not going to solve any of these issues unless we look at the values behind these systems and the rules that are behind them. So we think this is not just about re-regulating these systems across the UK, it's about replumbing them. When I say replumbing, getting the values of these systems right. Let's protect the environment. Let's not pollute for profit. Let's make sure we're transparent with data. Let's make sure these systems are net zero and driving restoration of our environment, so biodiversity gain, etc. We went out ahead of the general election with a manifesto. All the political parties had one. We had one too, so we had a manifesto. The things in there are not complicated. They were as simple as we have decent, it's not perfect, but we have decent environmental law in this country, the UK. They are devolved matters, they become very complicated, but the laws, if they're properly enforced, should help to do the job of restoring our environment. So it's enforce the laws properly. Let's refund the regulators. It's not rocket science. Unless the regulators have the money that they need to monitor, investigate, and then enforce the law, it's not going to happen. Okay, particularly when you have a privatised water system. So we also need to end the profiting from pollution. And then there's a lot to do. There's a lot to do to clean up our waterways. So I'm from Surfers Against Sewage. I would say let's start with the places that the human beings also go in the water, where we swim and we surf and we paddle, places that are important for our tourist economies. So these are vital places. Let's start there. Let's clean these up and then move and flush through the whole system. The reason why I say we've got to start there is that we last year had over 2,000 people contact us to tell us they had got seriously ill from being associated with water. That was sometimes as simple as being near it, fishing, for example. But 60% of the cases of serious illness were from people who had been next to supposedly excellently designated water with excellent status, right? So these are meant to be our cleanest, our best, and people are still getting ill. So we've got a lot of work to do. The fifth thing we campaign hard on is, we heard about it today, but let's really take it seriously, is a nature-based approach. We have to take this, we have to look at these environments holistically and ensure we treat them as catchments. We need to rewild, rewood, make them wetter and cleaner, and nature will do a lot of that job for us. And then finally, coming back to values, we absolutely need the data so that we know what's going on in our rivers, lakes and seas, because we only just know the very scratch the surface of the stuff that's happening in here. We've heard about PCBs, microplastics, hormones, new viruses, etc., etc., and the list goes on. We know so little about it, so we absolutely need to do that. I could bang on, but I feel like the long hand of time is coming in behind me. So all I want to say to you is the last key message, just to land that with you yet again, is that this is something that matters to people in their communities. We've touched on citizen science. There are people campaigning for bathing water designation across Wales. We have 2 places in Wales where you can swim, and it's designated inland. We have seas as well, but we need more of those, because the bathing water regulations can be used as a lever to drive positive environmental improvement. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.